Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. So in this session, we want to discuss the methods to determine the time standard. There are several methods by which standard times can be established for a work or for a task. They vary in terms of the accuracy and reliability of the values that are derived from them and in the amount of time required to apply them. So in this figure shows several methods to determine the time standard. So we start with the first method, estimation technique. In this method, the person familiar with the jobs performed in the department is asked to judge how much time should be allowed for the given task. Because this method depends on the estimator's judgment or estimation, it is the least accurate of the techniques for determining time standards. But on the other hand, it is still better than making no estimate of time and simply assigning a worker to the task with no accountability. The second method is historical records. In this method, the actual times and production quantities from records of previous identical or similar job orders are used to determine the time standards. And most companies require workers to submit time records indicating the time spent on orders or jobs or tasks and the quantities of parts turned in against that time. From these records, a calculation is made to determine the average time per part, and this can be used as a time standard for the next order. Historical records are an improvement over estimate because they represent actual times for amounts of work completed. Their limitation is that they do not include any indication of the efficiency with which the work was accomplished. And the third method is work measurement techniques that we will cover in detail in this topic. So there are 4 work measurement techniques. First, direct time study. Second, the predetermined motion time system. Third method, standard data system, SDS, followed by the fourth technique, work sampling. So the work measurements techniques here are more time consuming to implement, but they are more accurate than estimation or historical records. The 4 work measurement techniques are described briefly in this section. In the pyramidal structure of work, a task consists of work elements and how each work element consists of basic motion elements. The various work measurements techniques measure work at a different level of this task hierarchy. And this figure shows the correspondence between the task hierarchy and work measurement technique. So we start with the first work measurement techniques, direct time study. Direct time study involves direct observation of a task using stopwatch or other device to record the time taken to accomplish the task. The task is usually divided into work elements, and each work element is timed separately. While observing the worker, the time study analyzes, evaluates the worker's performance or worker pace, and a record of this pace is attached to each work element times. And this evaluation of the worker's pace is called performance rating. The observed time is multiplied by the performance rating to obtain the normal time for the element of the task. So this direct time study method will be discussed in detail in the other sessions. In this session, we just briefly describe in the 4 techniques, the 4 work measurement techniques. The second work measurement technique is predetermined motion time system, PMTS. A predetermined motion time system relies on a database of basic motion elements, such as grabs, and move that are common to nearly all manual industrial tasks. Associated with each motion element is set of normal times, whose value depend on the conditions under which the motion element was performed. For example, the normal time for a reach depends on the distance reached. Longer distance take more times. The normal times for a move depend on distance moved and the weight of the object being moved, and so on. So there are two advantages related to PMTS. First, in this technique, the performance rating is not required, and the second advantage, they can be applied to determine the time standard for a task before production. Again, the detailed explanation on these PMTS work measurement techniques will be discussed further in other section. The third work measurement techniques is a standard data system, means compilation of normal times values for work element used in tasks that are performed in a given facility. These normal times are used to establish time standard for tasks that are composed of work elements similar to those in the database. An advantage of the standard data system is that a time standard can be set before the job is in production. And the last work measurement technique is work sampling. Work sampling uses random sampling techniques to study work situation so that the proportion of time spent in different activities can be estimated with a defined degree of statistical accuracy. Example of the activities in a work sampling study might include setting up for production, producing parts, machine idle, and so on. The objective in a work sampling study may be to measure machine utilization in the plant or to determine an appropriate allowance factor for use in setting standard in direct time study. The objective is not always to determine time standard, but when used established standard, the statistical errors inherent in the sampling procedure cause the time standard to be less accurate than those obtained by the other work measurement techniques. So that's the detail about these work measurement techniques. Again, we have discussed in general two methods to determine time standard. Start with the estimation method, followed by the historical records. And in this topic, we want to focus on the four work measurement techniques. Yeah, four work measurement techniques. Start with the direct time study, predetermined motion time system, standard data system, and work sampling. So again, the detail on these four techniques will be discussed further in other session. So thank you for this session.